Francois Hollande with the UK Prime Minister David Cameron at the start of a week where the French president seeks commitments for support in his war against ISIL. It started with a solemn moment. The two men at the Bataclan Theatre, the dismal scene of mass killing at a rock concert. 90 people died. They both paid homage to the dead by laying a single rose. Cameron is promising more military support. He hopes to get parliamentary approval for airstrikes against ISIL in Syria. He's hoping there won't be a repeat of 2 years ago when he failed to win a vote for bombing in Syria against Assad forces.
And later this week I will set out in Parliament our comprehensive strategy for tackling ISIL. I firmly support the action that President Hollande has taken to strike ISIL in Syria, and it's my firm conviction that Britain should do so too.
We're
convinced we must continue to strike ISIL in Syria. We will intensify our strikes. We will choose the sites that will cause the most damage to this terrorist army. And our aircraft carrier, that will soon arrive in the area, have been mandated to strike, and strike hard against ISIL.
And France isn't just looking for military support. It wants to bolster agreements to improve European intelligence cooperation and impose more border checks within the EU. Francois Hollande finds his popularity rising after a week of national trauma with 130 lives lost in the Paris attacks. One poll says more than 90% support his actions so far. The Hollande-Cameron meeting and their simple, anonymous gesture laying single roses here amongst the rest of the flowers here at the Bataclan mark the start of a really difficult week for the French president. In fact, it could be the hardest in his entire presidency. He has to get more support for what he calls the war against ISIL. But France can't go it alone. On Tuesday, Hollande will leave Paris for Washington. He'll be after more military commitment in Syria from Barack Obama. The US president and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, appeared to have broken some of the ice between them at the G20 meeting in Turkey earlier this month. There will be efforts for a grand military coalition to include Russia, and Hollande plans to head to Moscow later in the week in an effort to secure a deal with Putin. Not everyone back home, though, is confident about the endgame.
More bombs won't solve the conflict in the Middle East. Our military chief of staff, Pierre de Villiers, said that we won't win on the short term militarily against ISIL. It's about political and diplomatic solutions.
Hollande also plans to meet Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel. He'll no doubt consult her on the prospect of Putin being on board. But the Russian president, who's heavily committed to supporting Syria's President Bashar al-Assad with his own airstrikes, is going to want concessions. He's likely to want the lifting of sanctions for his action in Crimea and eastern Ukraine, and that may be too high a price to pay.